One of the most endearing English legends is that of the famed archer who stole from the rich to give to the poor. There have been so many variations of Robin Hood, enough that many of them have blended together over the years. Robin Hood is a legend that did not come into being with all his traits fully established. Even his most well-known characteristic is something that was introduced many centuries after the first tales and ballads of Robin Hood were spun. Because there have been so many versions produced over the years, I won't go into every single one, but rather present the highlights of his legacy. The tales of Robin Hood first started appearing in the 15th century, which already established him as a skilled archer and hero of the people, albeit without the philanthropy categorized by later portrayals. Robin Hood's support of King Richard, his animosity with Prince John, and his romance with Maid Marian would be added later, as more and more writers started to include their own interpretations. For a time, he was even depicted as a mere crook, just getting his jollies off with bilking the rich. Robin's origin story would also occasionally change. Sometimes he would be a regular commoner or yeoman. Other times he was written as being of noble birth. Eventually the concept of Robin fighting in the Crusades was added, which furthered his loyalty to King Richard. His merry men would also be fleshed out over the centuries, including his closest companion Little John, the young Will Scarlet, the helpful Friar Tuck, and the musician Alan a Dale. Eventually, going into the 18th century, the tales of Robin Hood took a more farcical approach in his fight against the rich citizens of Nottingham. A lot of our modern ideas of Robin Hood can be credited to 19th century American writer Howard Pyle and his book The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood. Pyle combined a lot of previous accounts of Robin Hood while also bringing his own ideas to the table and making the stories more palatable to a broad audience. He also developed Robin's motivation of stealing from the rich to give to the poor. It's from that source that so many film, television, and radio adaptations have taken a lot of inspiration. It's little surprise that when film started to become a viable narrative medium, that Robin Hood would make his way to the screen. The first screen depiction of the character was in 1908, and then in 1922 he was portrayed by Douglas Fairbanks, very well known and celebrated for his swashbuckling roles. The medium truly allowed the legend of Robin Hood to come alive with the various stunts that could be performed on film. In 1938, what I consider the quintessential version of The Archer was released. The Adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn in the title role is an incredible Technicolor adventure. Warner Brothers spent lavishly on producing the film, and the result paid off. There's an elegance with this film and a joy that radiates off the screen. Flynn brought a dashing and charming quality to Robin Hood. Melville Cooper was scheming as the Sheriff of Nottingham, while Claude Rains showed what a fun role Prince John was to play. In a lot of adaptations, I find Prince John tends to steal the show because of how over-the-top and slimy his performers portray him. There are so many standout scenes in The Adventures of Robin Hood that later film versions would take quite a bit of inspiration from it. The sword fight on the stairs, the scene where Robin disguised himself to take part in an archery competition, and the romantic scenes between Robin and Marian are instantly iconic and wonderfully directed by Michael Curtiz. Like I said at the start of the video, there are so many screen adaptations of Robin Hood, and so I won't be able to mention all of them, but here's some of the most well-known and interesting takes on him. One that a lot of people have fond memories of is Disney's animated film Robin Hood, although it was not the first time he was adapted at the studio, as Disney had previously produced a live-action film titled The Story of Robin Hood. However, it's that animated take with anthropomorphic animals depicting the residents of Nottingham that's continued to resonate with people, and it's easy to see why. It's a charming recap of a few of Robin's adventures, and the decision to have the cast be animals allows it to stand apart from other versions of the legend. The songs are memorable, and the animators and Disney story team come up with humorous escapades and personalities for the characters. Prince John, voiced hilariously by Peter Ustinov, being depicted as a frequent thumbsucker is particularly funny. 3 years later, there was Robin and Marian, which showed an older Robin Hood who's been away at war and about ready to retire. Yet his sense of good prevails. Sean Connery is excellent in the role, and I love how the fight scenes are choreographed. Richard Lester and Connery seemed intent on showing a Robin truly reaching the end of his life, and leaving behind a legacy, which is why the original title was The Death of Robin Hood, but that was deemed uncommercial, and kind of a spoiler. Despite the pedigree involved, I don't often see this one discussed, but I think it deserves attention. An attempt was made to turn him into an action blockbuster hero for the 90s in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. It's a noble effort, but doesn't quite stick the landing for me. One of my main problems is actually Robin Hood himself. Kevin Costner comes from the Gary Cooper School of Acting, which works great for something like Field of Dreams and Dances with Wolves. However, it's not quite the right fit for Robin Hood, not helped by his decision to play the role with his American accent sorta kinda intact. Try as he might, I just did not buy him as the character. For me, the real star of Prince of Thieves is Alan Rickman as the Sheriff of Nottingham. He actually rewrote a good chunk of his dialogue and was not afraid of going really hammy for the part, and he is a delight to watch and becomes the main reason to watch this movie. I also have to give credit to Michael Kamen's score, which has the right adventurous quality to it, although there is a certain generation who will most recognize the music from its use in Disney DVD promos. Of course, Robin Hood has also gotten his fair share of parodies. Probably the best one I can recall is Chuck Jones' Looney Tunes cartoon, Robin Hood Daffy. With Porky Pig also playing the role of Friar Tuck, the short has a lot of fun with the perceptions of Robin Hood as he desperately tries to prove he's the famous outlaw. As expected from Chuck Jones, the slapstick is on point, and this becomes one of Daffy's most memorable appearances. It's such an iconic and well-regarded cartoon, Warner Brothers even included it as a bonus feature on the DVD and Blu-ray versions of The Adventures of Robin Hood. There's also Mel Brooks' Robin Hood Men in Tights, which simultaneously spoofs both the Kevin Costner and the Errol Flynn films, although Cary Elwes definitely takes more cues from Flynn.
Because, unlike some other Robin Hoods, I can speak with an English accent.
While not among the best Brooks comedies in my opinion, there's still a decent amount of laughs here. Richard Lewis is a lot of fun as Prince John, and has a great musical number thrown in too. Some of the humor definitely plants this in 1993, but the film nonetheless works, a loving tribute to the adventures of Robin Hood, as well as a light potshot at Prince of Thieves. There was also a Robin Hood parody in Shrek, who was made a lot more villainous. And French. Not too long ago, Ridley Scott attempted a more historically accurate depiction of Robin Hood. Well, as historically accurate as a movie about a person who never existed could be. There was a grandness to his version I appreciated, and Scott was not afraid of showing the griminess of England at the time. Russell Crowe is good as Robin Hood, although there's not much stealing from the rich to give to the poor in this movie, although he still does a lot of saving the day. The film delves quite heavily into the politics of the day, with a pre-Star Wars Oscar Isaac going all out as Prince John, although they do add some depth to him. It's a tad long, but I still like this Robin Hood. And now we have a new Robin Hood movie with Taron Egerton picking up the bow and arrow, and which opened on Wednesday. Did you see it yet? Let me know in the comments what you thought of it. Regardless of how this new film does at the box office, Robin Hood will continue to live on through the ages as someone who uses his abilities to help those in need and stop those who seek to take advantage of them. While he has definitely changed a lot since the first ballads were sung, it says something that Robin Hood has yet to fade into obscurity as we continue to watch and enjoy his battles with the Sheriff of Nottingham and hanging out with his merry men in Sherwood Forest. See you next time.